This is Marcia Bedovan. I'm at the Plant Recording Studios in Sausalito with Joe Satriani and engineer-producer John Cuniberti.
That's
John.
us.
Hi, Joe.
Hello.
Hello.
Are you going to be recording to analog or digital?
Today we're going to go to analog. The last couple of records have been on Pro Tools. I think eventually it'll go to Pro Tools, HD. But right now, today, since it's just the three of them, I can easily do this on a 16-track, and I prefer the sound of it. And I thought it'd be fun to go back, and we haven't used tape in quite some time. So,
So, John, what's the preferred signal path you have for recording Joe's guitar?
there's been a lot of experimenting going on, but at the end of the day, we end up using an SM57 into a Neve mic pre. I would say probably the majority of the time.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about that signal path that seems to be a good marriage with his technique, his guitar playing, his style, and his equipment. So that seems to work really well. As far as limiters go, I'll often use a limiter on Joe when I go to tape, and I'd say 90% of the time it's an 1176. All his melody guitar parts, and sometimes his solos, but mostly his melody guitar parts, I treat like a human voice. So the limiter choice there, hands down, is a LA2A. I treat it like someone singing, because in fact it is. I mean, the way the waveforms look is very much like a singer, and the way he articulates on the guitar. So the LA2A is a beautiful instrument for that. So, but for like his rhythm parts, a lot of the solo parts we use 1176 because so I can adjust the attack and release. It's really important to be able to do that, and we've been using those since '79.
Yeah.
We've always had both those units. Every studio we've ever worked in have always had them. If they didn't, we'd get them. Joe owns some now. Because he started recording at home, which is I've encouraged him to do it, but he soon learned that it wasn't sounding the same. And I said, well, you're going to have to get the same gear. So,
People call their home studio the mothership or stuff like that. It's a shuttle. I have a shuttle studio. I've got a small Mackie board. I use the Millennium Media STT1 as sort of like my main interface. I haven't gotten around to that, rack of Neves yet, but I've got a bunch of APIs. And I have an LA2A, an 1176, and a 2160 or a 2160. How do you guys call it? 2610, one of those, yeah. I got one of those because I thought I'm going to want to have just a bass setup and then just a guitar setup, and then I thought then I might use the bass setup for, as John was saying, the solo. So I wound up with that unit with the two of them together, and with the two STT1s, I've got this easy setup.
yes,
Hi.
I'm in an interview.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
Anything you want to say?
Would you like
You're on camera.
anything you'd like to say about Universal Audio?
Yeah, they're great. Give us more gear.
Thank you.
Joe, what's your guitar amp setup for this album?
I hope to be using an amp that we're just in the development stages for. It's something I'm doing with PV. We're taking a bunch of ideas I've got from a bunch of older amps I have and I've used in some of their current product, and we're trying to put together that ultimate amp that would really work for me live and then in certain aspects in the studio. But at the end of the day, when you have to do that very vocal sounding melody and you've got all the rest of those things set up, the 57 and the Neve and the LA2A and everything, you do need an amp that's smooth, that's very responsive, that's not too compressed, that's lively, that's got a lot of headroom with gain, that can play with distortion and actual sound pressure level, so that you can play with the speaker quite a bit.
John, you have an extensive collection of vintage and esoteric preamps. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I started collecting mic pre's back in the late 70s when it wasn't really fashionable. A very dear friend of mine, Dan Alexander, who has an audio business, was one of the first to actually take Neve modules and what became later popular, the Telefunken V72s, and package them up. In fact, on Joe's first record, Not of This Earth, we recorded most of that through a pair of 1064s that Dan had packaged up in a box for me, because the studios we were working in, the consoles weren't spectacular. And I always wanted to work on a Neve, but of course we couldn't afford it then. So we recorded that with mostly these 1064s. It later became quite popular, but of course in the late 70s, most of the modules that are now in boxes were still in consoles because people are still using the consoles. It was only later throughout the 80s and of course into the 90s when the consoles were too small, too old, too obsolete or whatever, that they were all taken apart and put in boxes. So I have a fairly big collection of them, and there's one I brought today that I thought you'd find interesting.
Let's see it.
This is a package.
Nice.
This is what this is what Dan Alexander put together for me back in late 80s, and it's a pair of United Audio 1108s out of a console that he decommissioned in Los Angeles. We're not sure. I asked him the other day what console it was, and he couldn't remember. It was a while back. But these are, you see the little things here you pull out. They were slide-in modules that fit in someone's console somewhere in Los Angeles. God knows what hits were done on these. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we were told that these were really nice sounding mic pre's, and you know, solid state. And we thought we would rack them up. So I don't know how many of these he had. I think he might have had 24 of them. So, you know, made a couple of packages like this, and they have all the things you would normally find. You know, gain and a fader and let's see, phase reverse. But the thing I used this mostly for was for the direct inputs. This is a marvelous, well, a direct box essentially for bass, synthesizers. If somebody brings in a keyboard, always went to this. Beautiful. I love this thing.
Do you
And
still use it?
Yeah, I still use it. In fact, today it's going to be on the hi-hats. There you go. So, you know, and I have all the other mic pre's that everybody uses, but I never had a 610. I've looked for them, but I've never had one. So when your 6176 became available, I was so thrilled. And I have one now, and I'm using it all the time, and I absolutely love it. It's just great. And now with the 1176 combination, it's I wish I had it on a couple of other records I've done. It's really a nice unit.
You should get some more.
We will.
Get a little rack.
Did you bring some more?
And finally, do you have any guitar recording secrets that you'd like to share with us?
One. Just get yourself a really hot guitar player.
Yes.
I wish there was a technique. I would patent it. But there really isn't. It's really all about the guitar player.
Yeah.
Joe's very demanding on himself mostly with his technique and his compositions and his production ideas. So it really requires the equipment to rise to the occasion. It's really great to use vintage audio equipment. I love it. It's again, it can be a bit experimental. You know, the combinations of this equipment, they act differently. An API mic pre into 1176 is a very different experience than say a Neve or 1108. But at the end of the day, you have to serve the guitar player. You have to serve what it is they're trying to do. And I could be in here between the speakers going, wow, this is the most amazing thing I've ever heard. And Joe might walk into the control room and go, what are you doing? So, you know, there has to be this marriage between the technique of the guitar player himself and the technique the engineer is employing at the time. And then the gear has to serve all of that. Not only his guitar, but the rest of the recording chain. And when you're making records one track at a time, like is commonly done now, you really don't know what the record's going to sound like until all the tracks are recorded. And it's often a surprise. Sometimes it's a shock. There's always a bit of experimentation involved. We don't really know. It's a bit of alchemy, really.
Well, great. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.